Insurance licensing exam. A transportation network company driver must maintain a primary automobile policy with minimum coverage of at least $50,000/$100,000/$30,000. When the commissioner believes that a person has engaged in an unfair method of competition or an unfair trade practice, before issuing a cease and desist order, the commissioner must host a hearing. Who are the parties to a bond? Principal obligee surety. Because of work-related injury, an employee was unable to work for 28 days. Workers' compensation will pay for a max amount of how many days of disabled benefit? 28. Under workers' compensation, an injured worker may receive a disability benefit equal to what % of his or her average weekly wages? 66 2/3%. A bond is written for a set limit, and the surety will be liable only for this amount of the limit. This limit is known as the penalty. The party to a surety or fidelity bond who promises to fulfill the obligation is the principal. The type of professional liability coverage a medical doctor needs is malpractice coverage. The occurrence form trigger is based on which of the following? The date when injury or damage occurs. All of the following are supplemental payments found in liability policies except costs the insured incurred in hiring an attorney. All of the following are unfair claims settlement practices except suggesting negotiations when settling a claim. Which would not be covered by the inside the premises robbery or safe burglary other property coverage. An employee caught stealing cash from the register. A premium discount is the term that describes when an insured owed a total standard premium greater than $5,000. An employer subject to workers' compensation laws may meet the requirement for coverage by securing coverage for employees in any of the following ways, except purchasing workers' compensation insurance through Lloyd's of London. When is an insurer allowed to add optional or enhanced coverages that increase an insured's premium on a motor vehicle policy? Whenever the client has given express consent. With respect to an auto insurance policy that has been in effect for 60 days or more, the only reason that allows the insurer to cancel the policy within 10 days advance notice is the policy premium is not paid when due. All of the following statements are false regarding garage physical damage coverage except no coverage is provided for any auto stored for more than 45 days at a location not shown on declarations. All of the following statements concerning liability coverage are true except the policyholder can sue the insurer whether or not all conditions and provisions of the policy have been met. An employee is injured while visiting an employer's out-of-state site. How will workers' compensation benefits be determined? Benefits will be provided if the state was listed on the policy information page. Which of the following is considered a work-related injury/occupational disease under workers' compensation law? Tom works as a painter in an auto body shop. The chemicals from the paint aggravate Tom's asthma to the point that he must be hospitalized for several days. In which type of commercial crime policy coverage is triggered by a loss that happens during the policy period but is not necessarily discovered during the policy period? Loss sustained form. A meteorite hits the insured's car, causing damage. Under which of the following coverages in a personal auto policy would this loss be paid? Other than collision. CGL coverage B, personal and advertising injury, will cover Inadvertent injury to others caused in the course of advertising the insured's product. An insurer publishes intimidating brochures that portray an insurer's competition as financially and professionally unstable. Which of the following best describes this act? Illegal under any circumstances. Under the personal auto policy, liability for bodily injury resulting from the insured's use of a non-owned automobile is provided by the uninsured policy on an excess basis. In the event of a claim under a commercial general liability policy, the insured has all of the following duties to the insurer except submitting to a medical exam when requested. An uninsured motor vehicle includes all of the following except a vehicle being used for public livery. In the case of death of any employee resulting from a work-related injury or an accident in which 3 or more employees are injured, the employer must give notice to the director / immediately. How are surety bonds different from insurance? Surety bonds guarantee specific duties or obligations will be fulfilled. Insurance pays for losses. Which of the following statements would be correct if an insured failed to maintain the underlying limits as required by a personal umbrella policy? The insured would be responsible for the amount required as underlying limits in the event of a claim. A passenger in a friend's car is injured while getting into the car. Which of the following statements would apply if both the passenger and the driver had medical payments coverage under a personal auto policy? The driver's policy would be primary. Which professional liability form provides form coverage for liability arising out of malpractice, error, or mistakes made in rendering professional services? Physicians, surgeons, and dentists' malpractice. Under which of the following circumstances would an insurance company not be responsible for payment of a claim involving an automobile that is insured under the policy? The operator of the auto at the time of the accident was named on the policy as an excluded driver. Which of the following statements is true regarding the premium computation for workers' compensation insurance? A premium auditor has the right to examine the insured's compensation records at the end of the policy period to determine the actual premium basis. The employee theft crime policy includes a coverage extension that applies to employees temporarily outside the coverage territory for up to 90 days. The primary purpose of a surety bond is to make sure obligations are fulfilled. Which of the following classes of employment are exempt from Colorado workers' compensation laws? Employees of a religious organization, employees who do domestic work on a part-time basis in a private residence, real estate agents whose compensation is based on commissions. Which of the following would be required to be licensed as an insurance producer? A salaried employee who advertises and solicits insurance. SuperValue Store has a commercial general liability policy written with a general aggregate limit of $300,000 and an occurrence limit of $100,000. A customer injured on the premises was awarded $45,000 for medical expenses and loss earnings, and $60,000 for pain and suffering. The court costs and attorney fees were $15,000. How much will the CGL policy pay? $115,000. The policy would pay up to the occurrence limit plus, as supplementary payments, the cost of the court and attorney fees over and above the limit. Professional liability coverage protects the insured against legal liability resulting from errors and omissions. Crunchy Flakes cereal company shipped some of its produce in faulty containers that caused spoilage. This resulted in some consumers becoming ill. If the company is sued for this event, it would be an example of a product liability claim. A plant worker for a chemicals manufacturer was recently diagnosed with a rare blood disease. She told her doctor that her job required her to hand industrial waste chemicals. Which of the following types of injuries is covered under the workers' compensation policy? Occupational disease caused or aggravated by a condition of employment. Under a personal auto policy, in which of the following locations would a vehicle primarily garaged in California be covered? Any other state. The primary purpose of a surety bond is to make sure obligations are fulfilled. Directors and officers' liability insurance defends actions against a corporation or its officers and directors alleging wrongful acts. With regard to the coverage provided, wrongful acts include all of the following except embezzlement. All of the following are factors in rating workers' compensation except sales. All of the following situations would be covered under a professional liability policy except the failure of an attorney to properly defend a client due to his personal dislike of the client. An insurance agency could purchase an errors and omission insurance policy which would provide protection in the event of any of the following events except the agency loses commission income from policies that were not issued by the insurer. A producer who is licensed to transact several types of insurance wants to remove a line of authority from his license. What should the producer do? Submit an appropriate form to the commissioner and return the license for amendment. An employer excluded from workers' compensation laws may elect to accept the provisions of the Act by purchasing and keeping in force a workers' compensation policy covering employees. Supplementary payments on a CGL provide all of the following except up to $500 a day for lost earnings and $2,000 for the cost of bail bonds. Which of the following benefits payable under the workers' compensation insurance is subject to a waiting period? Loss of wages. Which of the following is a legal reason for an insurer to non-renew a policy that provides coverage required by the financial responsibility law? The insured failed to pay an advanced premium. All of the following are factors in rating workers' compensation insurance except sales. A man desperately wants to become an insurance agent, but cannot pass the Colorado exam. His cousin offers to take the exam under the name's name and passes. 3 months after the license is issued, that gets discovered. What will the commissioner's action be? Revoke the license. The commissioner may revoke a producer license for all of the following reasons except acting in a fiduciary capacity. Workers' compensation will pay under which of the following situations? Paid without consideration of fault or negligence on the part of either employee or employer. According to the Standard Workers' Compensation and Employer Liability Policy Form, a state should be listed in Part 3, Other States' Insurance of the Workers' Compensation and Employer's Liability Policy when the insured expects to extend operations to that state. Professional liability coverage protects against legal liability resulting from errors and omissions. When would uninsured motorist coverage apply? When the other party is legally liable but has no insurance. In the event of a work-related injury, an employee must be disabled for how long before workers' compensation will pay any disability benefits? 3 days. The medical payments coverage in a personal auto policy will pay reasonable medical expenses for all of the following except the insured is injured while exiting a friend's mobile home. Which commercial crime form would provide coverage for a loss that did not necessarily happen during the policy period but was revealed during the policy period? Discovery form. Under the coverage of which of the following liability policies may an insured require the insurer to defend a claim? Professional liability. A automobile liability insurance policy used to provide proof of financial responsibility must contain which of the following limits of coverage? $25,000 for bodily, $50,000 bodily, 2 plus $15,000 damages to property. Whenever the commissioner issues a cease and desist order, how will that order be delivered to the person in violation? By certified mail. Under the limits of insurance provision found in the physical damage coverage form in the commercial auto policy, how much will an insurer pay to repair or replace a covered auto? The lesser of the actual cash value or the cost to repair or replace a covered auto. In the event of a worker's death, workers' compensation will pay up to what amount for burial expenses? $7,000. When an umbrella policy is broader than underlying insurance and it pays a loss that is not covered by the underlying policy, it usually only pays the excess over the self-insured retention. Surety bonds are written for a definite limit called a bond penalty. Which of the following liability policies is usually written on a claims-made form? Professional liability insurance. If an injured employee also receives disability payments from another source, workers' compensation disability benefits may be coordinated with other benefits. Coverage for medical payments under a personal auto policy applied to expenses following a covered accident that are incurred and services rendered within what maximum time period? 3 years. Employment practices liability insurance, EPLI, would not cover claims arising from deliberate law violation. All of the following are requirements for obtaining a producer's license except attaining age 21. Which commercial crime form would provide coverage for a loss that did not necessarily happen during the policy period but was revealed during the policy period? Discovery form. Non-compliance with the regulation regarding fees charged by the producers may result in which of the following penalties: fines and license suspension or revocation. Before forming a self-insurance pool, a public entity must submit a proposal to a commissioner. If an insurer makes medical payments coverage available, such coverage must provide benefits of $5,000 per person. What type of coverage do umbrella policies provide? Excess coverage over an underlying or primary policy. Surety bonds are written for a definite limit called the bond penalty. Workers' compensation rating is developed by applying a rating bureau job classification rate to each $100 of payroll. An insured has $5,000 of medical coverage on a personal auto policy at the time of a covered accident. The insured and 2 passengers are injured. Medical treatment costs $7,000 for the insured, $4,000 for the first passenger, and $8,000 for the second passenger. How much will the policy pay under medical payments coverage? $14,000. The limit is not more than $5,000 per person, per accident. Notice of an injury compensable under workers' compensation must be given by the employer to the division and the insurance carrier within 10 days. Which of the following policies will help an auto dealership cover most of its liability exposures? A garage liability coverage. All workers' compensation insurance issued in Colorado must include provisions for employer's legal liability. Which of the following special liability coverages will provide protection to managers of a corporation for claims arising from wrongful act committed by the manager while in an official capacity? Directors and officers' liability. When a replacement auto is acquired during the policy period, what coverage will apply to it automatically under a personal auto policy? Whatever coverage applied to the vehicle being replaced. The driving record of an insured is not grounds for an insurer to cancel an auto policy unless convictions for traffic violations result in 7 or more points being assessed under the point system. A professional who wants coverage for all liability exposures should purchase what form of liability insurance? Commercial, general, and professional. Sole proprietors, partners, and corporate officers actively engaged in business may elect to be included by endorsement as an employee of the insured employer. When an insurer is authorized to cancel, non-renew, or increase premiums on an auto liability policy that insures more than one person, because of the claim experience or driving record of at least one but not all insureds, in lieu of cancellation or non-renewal, the insurer may exclude the coverage for the offending drivers if they are named on the policy as excluded drivers. Workers' compensation statutes provide coverage for diseases that occur as a result of working in the employer's working environment. Which of the following is an example of a disease that would not be covered by such provisions? An employee of a medical facility who suffers from a common cold. Which of the following special liability coverages will provide protection to managers of a corporation for all claims arising from a wrongful act committed by the manager while in an official capacity? Directors and officers' liability. When an insurer intends to not renew an automobile insurance policy beyond its current expiration date, the insurer must give how many days advance prior notice of their intentions? 30 days. The max amount a bail bondsman may charge an innocent person who is arrested is $50 or 15% of the bond amount, whichever is greater. An insured has a personal auto policy with both comprehensive, other than collision, and collision coverage. His car is stolen and recovered 5 days later. If the insured claims transportation expenses of $20 per day, how much will his policy pay? $60. The policy will pay $20 per day after 48 hours, not to exceed 30 days total. Under the coverage of which of the following liability policies may an insured require the insurer to defend a claim? Professional liability.